Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face Off XL! In this bumper episode we are looking at April of 1994, and because it's an XL episode we get to check out the 5 big UK magazines: Amiga Power, Amiga Format, the One For Amiga, UK Amiga and Amiga Action. Fight! Let's start with Amiga Power, that had a single disc with 2 demos, and the first being Benefactor, a game and demo that we've seen before. But it's been a year or so since then, so let's check it out again. We are that green dude, and what we need to do is save the other small people in the level. We do this by getting them to the teleporter that we used to enter the level in the first place. Now this is done through an array of abilities, like short jumping, long jumping, and collecting keys. And once the little one is released, we will need to use him to throw him up so we can go and flick a switch. Which will net us some trainers that will allow us to jump even further than before so we can press more switches. Now this is a relatively easy first level, and thankfully there are more, and it gets harder obviously, as we have this one that has a zipline that you can only use once, so you're going to need to plan things out, or hit escape and retry. Our tiny friends come in a few colours, and when they're grey, they're effectively lemmings, as they'll just walk around and get themselves killed or walk off ledges. So we need to colour them using the machine, one that will also require paint. Yep, this is very much a puzzle platformer, and the developers were better known for the Pinball series of games. This is a fun enough demo, and it has even a few more levels than what we've seen here, including some in other zones. The next demo is for Jet Strike, a game we have seen countless times before, and each time it's been a new set of levels. But it's still the same old me that gets a tiny bit better with every attempt at one of these demos each time. Although that's not saying much. Here we have 3 night levels. Not that you're gonna see too much of it, as I'm still not very good at the game. I have no idea why, but the controls in the game just do not click with me. It never has. So you get to see one of several aircraft explode across this landscape, and every so often I might even get to see the enemy base. But don't take my ability to play this game as a knock against it. I think this is actually far better than what my attempts actually show. And seeing there's only so many times you can watch me explode, let's move on to Amiga Format. And they went all out on the software this month, as they have 2 full programs and 2 demos as well. The first program is for Music X, a music making program back when X was a popular letter. This seems to be a bit of a cross between a MIDI sequencer and a mod tracker, and there is a whopping 5 pages in the magazine that goes over this. Now I don't have a single musical bone in my body, so we're barely going to get more than skin deep on this one. Thankfully there are a few examples that we had to expand onto another disc that help show off what it can do. But it might start off silent, as it's trying to use an external MIDI device, rather than using the internal samples, which we can change in the UI. But some of the tracks, well, they do sound a little bit odd. I guess I'm not using this correctly. For those of you that understand music notation above "all good boys deserve football," would most likely get far more out of this than I would. As to be honest, this was a disc that ended up being used as a blank to have something else put on. So let's switch over to the demos, and our first one is for Total Carnage, an arcade port of a game that was talked about as being a sequel to Smash TV, as you have this multi-directional shooting, weapons randomly popping up and lots of things to shoot at. But it plays a bit more like Commando than that previous title. Now this isn't a great game. I'm not sure if it's a port or the original arcade game that has these problems, but this just isn't all that much fun to play. Yeah, there are a number of weapons, but quite a few of them are just different coloured bullets. And those just look very simple. We do get a flamethrower, but it just seems to act like a wider range machine gun based on how they fire. Now this, from what I can recall, did not review very well, which makes it an odd choice to be picked for an Amiga 1200 bundle. The worst part is, I had this magazine back in the day, and this was the only commercial demo that I had to play. I can tell you, I did not get the full thing based on this demo. The next title is a shareware game called Dozer. This is an interesting little puzzle game that I didn't quite get at first, as I thought we had to kill or trap the dragon that's walking around. Instead, we need to push this block around to make a path for it to end up in the cell. This is because it follows a basic set of rules as it walks around, and you can use that to trick it. Which means this is a block pushing game, but with some extra bits to make it more complex. As there are tiles that will turn the block into a solid wall, and later on we'll find blocks that can only be pushed in a set direction, unless pushed into another tile that might rotate it around, or do other things to it. Now there's 10 levels to this demo, and they get quite difficult quickly. But if you wanted more than that, then you're going to have to go buy the full thing. The final program for Amiga Format is ProVector, an art package with a difference, as it's using vectors. If you're used to the more regular art programs, you might find this a little bit different, as you don't draw in pixels, it's more in lines and shapes. But these can basically be done at any resolution, as it's a rendered image. Also, because it's vectors, they are layered on top of each other, so you can move stuff between layers, or even apply effects that will change how the other layers look. You can also just move points around and change how the lines curve, so it changes dynamically. Now this is the full version of ProVector 2, but they also included a demo for 3 on the same disc. It's a bit of a shame that they didn't find any example pictures to put on here, as that really would have helped. So all you're going to really see is my really bad attempt at my logo, which was actually done as a vector image by a friend. So I'm hoping he doesn't see this. And with that, I think it's time for the next magazine. And it's the One For Amiga, that gave us 2 discs, 2 demos and 2 PD titles. And we start off with a big one, Heimdall 2. Now we've seen this game before, but it was a rolling demo. But now we have full control. This is an isometric RPG, and it's very nicely drawn and animated. And the first thing we're going to have to do is deal with showing a pass so we can get through a door. And after getting through there, we will find our main task for the demo, which is finding the king's son and brother as they've gone missing. And we're going to have to explore this castle and find people to talk to work out what's happened. This will require opening up paintings, finding hidden safes with items inside, and then leading us on to a fight in the dungeons, which can be done either with long-range bows or up close and personal with axes. You can also switch characters, as you have two that you will play with, Heimdall or Ursula. Now this is a lovely game with a complex spell system that I can barely remember anything for the demo, and we don't have any clues on how to use it here, so it's gonna have to be avoided. But this is a pretty large and decent demo, and it would have kept me hooked for ages. Shame there's no sound, but I guess you can't have it all. And as it is, I actually bought the full game even without playing this demo. Their first PD title is Power Attack. You control the turret in the middle of the screen, and you have two jobs. One, to shoot down any paratroopers that might get dropped. And did they really need to have such terrifying death screams? And two, to shoot down the enemy aircraft that are either just flying along or dropping the troopers. To progress to the next level, you have to shoot down a set number of planes, and you lose by letting too many of the paratroopers land on the ground and then attack your base. Now this actually seems relatively unique. Yes, it's a little like Missile Command, but I think it's different enough. But I'm sure one of you in the comments will let me know if this is based on another game. You also have the problem of ammo, as you have a limited amount, and you only get more back when you shoot down aircraft and the paratroopers. So you have to be a little picky with the shots taken. It's a simple game that ramps up quickly on the later levels, and it's quite nicely done for an Amos title. There's a little bit of slowdown when a lot of stuff ends up on screen, but I think I can forgive that for a fun little title. So I think this is one that you should try. If you can get over those screams, that is. The next demo is for Bump and Burn, a Mario Kart-like game that is a bit limited due to having to draw the road in the classic Outrun style. But we have multiple unique carts and power-ups to collect and use. Even if the control system is a little bit odd, as it's fire to accelerate, and then it's down to activate power-ups if you have one, which will then trigger after a few seconds, but some you'll then also have to press up to then use. But it all seems to move fast enough, and there seems to be a lot of character in the various carts. The engine is even quite advanced for the style, as we get lots of things on the road and at the sides that might slow you down or send you flying or even explode you. There's even a point where the road splits into multiple lanes with stuff in the middle. But it really can't seem to shake the Outrun style vibes, as you are also timed. So as well as having to get out in front and use all the various weapons, you also have to make sure you make it there in time, which is a bit of an odd mix. Now outside of doing anything more fancy on one of the more powerful machines, I think this might be the closest the A500 could get to having a kart game. But I can't say I was all that sold on the demo. And the last PD game for the one is Cookie, that starts off with a rendition of Lily the Pink, and then goes on to thank Ultimate Play the Game, as yes, this is a remake of a Spectrum title. And it's a Spectrum Ultimate Play the Game that I've never played before, so this is a new one on me. But it is a bit similar to the other games by that company, as you control the chef, and what you want to do is get the food into the bowl, and you do this by firing at them, and that will make them move around. There will also be baddies floating around as well that you can shoot at and make them bounce as well, but you want to make sure that they don't land in the bowl, as that will get you a penalty. What I found most of the time is you just need to find the right spot to sit in and then just keep shooting, and you can get the ingredients to bounce around in just the right arc to land in the bowl, and you don't have to move from that spot. But getting the knowledge of that place can take a little bit of effort. It's a fun, simple game that's not too bad, but this one doesn't seem to add too much to the title, outside of a new 16-bit lick of paint. Moving on, we have CU Amiga, and we have 2 discs with 2 bits of software, a demo and a PD title. And that first program is AdoRage, an animation system for use with video editing, as it's mostly about creating interesting transition effects. So there's really not too much to show with this one, as while it can do some fancy things, it's not really easy to show off. It's cool, but not really all that useful to me, right now or even back then. So let's check out the PD title Task Force, a strategy game in which you control a small group of soldiers, where you can move around these randomly generated maps to complete a mission. I'd like to say it's a PD take on UFO or XCOM if you prefer, but seeing they came out in the same year, I think this is more a new PD take on Laser Squad. And for a free game, this is very interesting and quite cool. You have 2 phases, a move and a fire, that are pretty much self-explanatory. But I will say that to shoot, you'll need to select your gun first and then your target, and there's a good chance that you will miss quite often. But you will need to remember to have equipped at least one gun to your soldiers before starting the mission, which is done from this screen where your people all have different stats, as well as different amounts of cash that can be spent on guns and armour. And you will need them all, as this is a decent sized map with quite a few people that you'll have to take on. This is a very complete game, down to the fact that there's music, and I think this is one that we may have to return to at some point. The other bit of software was a virus checker. Not a fancy bit of software, but useful if you get lots of discs from random people. And you also have to worry about any possible viruses moving from disk to disk or to a hard drive. Again, not something I would have used back in the day. Its main demo for the month is King's Quest VI. A series that I don't think is that fondly remembered on the Amiga as it is on PC, mostly because they always felt like a bit of a rushed port. This one looks nice enough, but I have to say right out of the gate, I have never been the biggest fan of the Sierra style adventure games. But let's see how we get on with this one. The control system is now fully mouse driven, with what was starting to become a style at the time, where you right click to cycle through the different actions, like walk, talk and interact, and then you left click to then do the ability. So we can pick up this plank of wood and find a box, then inside the box we can find a coin. I'm guessing this is from the very start of the game, as I've never actually played this one before, but it does look interesting enough, if a little stilted in the animations, and what initially looks like quite a large demo very quickly shows its limitations, as there's areas that will tell you, nope, you can't go there. But you do get to wander around a little bit and interact with a few people and solve a few small puzzles. This is one I probably would have played back in the day, as I did enjoy a good point and click adventure. But before we move on from the magazine, there's an extra bit of PD software that they didn't mention on the discs. It's Dots, a 2-player game where you place lines on a grid, with the aim being to complete a square so you gain a point. But you don't want to leave obvious moves for the other players. It's a classic school game, as you could play it on simple paper, but now you can use a computer that costs hundreds of pounds to do the same job. The PD game itself seems fine enough, but I'm not sure I would have played it all that much. The final magazine of the month is Amiga Action. That included a whopping 3 discs and 4 demos. And we start with Liberation, a game that was initially a CD32 exclusive, but we get a demo for any Amiga with 1.5 megabytes of RAM. And on a floppy disk. Now I'm going to level with you. I have no idea what you're meant to do in this game. You can walk around this nicely drawn cities in what feels like a dungeon crawler style, but it looks like this is being done in real 3D with textures. But I've never been able to work out exactly what it is you're meant to be doing. And so far with this demo, that hasn't changed. Someday I really need to sit down and work out what it is you're meant to do in this game, as I hear a lot of people raving about it. But all I really managed was, well, I fell off a few walkways, I shot a few things. Is it me, or does that look like K9 from Doctor Who? The second demo is Benefactor, which we've already seen and it's the exact same demo. So let's move on to Centre Court Tennis. A simple demo for what feels like a simple game. As really this is just you versus the computer player, who isn't all that good. And the demo is just you constantly serving. There's no points here. Now every so often you might get a reasonable set of volleys going, but as soon as someone scores, well, it resets, and you just get to do it all over again. And pretty much you've seen the entire content of that demo right here. It feels a little bit too small to really have even bothered. So let's move on to the final demo for the magazine and the episode, as it's Assassin's Special Edition. Now Team 17 made a bit of a habit out of taking their older games and then improving them, and then re-releasing them at budget prices. So gone is the boomerang, and in its place is a bionic arm with a gun. Those huge levels of old have been split up to make getting horribly lost a thing of the past. But that's not to say the levels still aren't quite large. As this demo shows, there's still quite a lot of area to explore. And just imagine, this was a small part of a much larger level before. Now this is a bit like Strider, as you can grab onto almost any surface and climb along them. And all this is in aid of trying to find the exit. But there are other things to find along the way, such as special items and stuff to increase your health. And those special items are quite cool as you have a range of them, and you can trigger them by holding down the fire button. Assassins is a fun game, and I think this does go a long way to improve things that the reviewers at the time really complained about. And with that, we're at the end of the content. And as this is an XL episode, we get to rank the software and pick the top 3 rather than the best magazines. And in third place, I'm giving it to King's Quest VI. I know I would have put a lot of time into this into the past, as I loved point and click adventures back then. In second, well, I'm gonna say Liberation. I still have no idea what you're doing in the game, but it has a large world for you to explore, and it is quite fancy. And in first place, I'm gonna have to say Heimdall 2. It's a great game, and this is a lovely demo. Everyone should go play it. And there we have it. Did I make the right choices? Or do you have your own ideas of what should have placed in the top 3? Let me know, as always, in the comments. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish. That was quite the large number of demos. And this was Goldfish on Games. As always, thanks for watching. I have so much fun checking out these old discs that it makes me happy that so many of you enjoy watching them. And if this was your first time, then you might want to check out 2 of the other videos that you can see on the screen right now. Or you might consider liking and subscribing and all that fun stuff to see more of me in the future.